and then I can get with, Brian's gonna try to find the liability form, he's been looking for it.
There's some of those laying around.
And then,
And what's the absolute minimum number? I know you said 10 to 15.
it'd be nice to have at least 10.
I should be able to do this.
Just, especially if we get, these four and you, and then as many people at district office, and it wouldn't be a bad idea.
And 10 not counting you, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so we actually only had 8 not counting you.
But it may not be a bad idea to invite either other principals or even some high school staff. Or the counseling service, some department.
Sure.
Along with the district office and the board, just to kind of get a perspective.
Well, that's a good idea.
Just a thought. Okay, so why did my thing go?
Go to sleep on you?
You know what, I think the sleep timer on this thing is set for a very short amount of time.
Just to keep us all alert
So
at
now
all
you can
times.
mail the way out.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I am going to call the governing board meeting of Wednesday, September 13th, 2017 to order. It is 6:31. Lisa, roll call, please. Present.
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 Thank you. And in our audience, we are honored to have Councilman Henry Wade. And would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. Adoption of the agenda. Do I have any amendments or motions?
Motion to approve as written.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. So we're at the call to public. Members of the board may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to ARS 38431, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for a future agenda. The board requests that all comments be limited to 3 minutes or less, and that the public refrain from the use of speech or language that is offensive or inappropriate pursuant to board policy KFA. So I do have some speaker cards, and I do want to let you know that we're very glad that you're coming out to speak, but we have a long agenda, so if I interrupt you at your 3 minutes, it's not that we don't want to hear what you have to say, but we want to be respectful to everyone that's in the room. So with that, we're going to have Elizabeth Howe, and following her, Bill Howe. And when you come up to the microphone, pull it up and hold it really close because we want to be able to hear you and record it.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Howe, and I am Mr. Miller's niece. I was originally from Gilbert and moved to Maricopa. It was hard for me to adapt, but once I found out that my uncle worked at the middle school, I could not wait. So I started in 4th grade in October, then 5th grade, then 6th grade with my uncle. My elementary past was a little bit of a struggle, everything new. But my uncle showed me the good in all of it. He helped me and showed me. Knowing that he was with me, I was so happy. But my cousin told me the day before he was leaving that I was heartbroken. Nothing could make this worse. I waited for him in 4th grade and waited until 6th, and then I lose him. When he was leaving, I walked by his doors. Tons of letters to let him stay, but there is bigger power. When I heard about this meeting, I felt a goodness inside of me. I still had a chance to keep him with me. I have all the 6th graders' signatures, and they barely know him. Once he left, it was quiet. We lost the pride in our panther. We all are disappointed, so this is why I am speaking here, to help kids enjoy him and to have him. He has always helped us, always, and I will know that. And I always have known that. So I say keep Mr. Miller at Maricopa Wells Middle School.
Thank you.
Next up, Bill Howe.
Thank you.
Thad Miller and I have been best friends since I was 10 years old, so for the last 39 years, we've been in touch constantly. Even though I've left Maricopa to play football in Europe, to go around the world, he went on his mission. We were always in constant contact. We both joined the same profession, and he tried to get me to teach junior high kids. During my teaching certificate, I went and taught junior high kids during substitution, and I'll tell you what, I couldn't do it. I wanted to pull my hair out and choke slam these little monsters. I found my peace with high school kids, but Thad has a talent with these kids. And if you've ever taught junior high kids or have one of your own, you know that they're going through a change that some of us just can't understand, even though we went through it ourselves. But that's Thad's wheelhouse. He really does get them, and they get him. They come to him for everything. They come for praise. They come for discipline. What Thad and Mr. Abel have built at that school is something utterly amazing. And I know that the move wasn't done to be a negative thing. I don't know all the information. But what Thad does at that school is nothing short of amazing. Him and I have talked nonstop for years about what a great educator is. It has nothing to do with testing. It has nothing to do with STEMs or math or this. It's about building relationships. It truly is about building relationships, and the relationship I've had with him for 39 years proves that, because ever since he was a little boy, he's done that. And the relationships he builds with these 6th and 7th and 8th graders lasts forever, because he's taught former classmates' kids, he's taught kids that's come through this town, and he's taught their kids, and they all come back. And there's never anything that's negative said about Mr. Miller. It's always, if you have a problem, go back and see Mr. Miller. I have a hard time calling him Mr. Miller. It's Thad to me. But he's just the most incredible guy. And I was gone for 30 years. Like I said, I went and left and played college ball. I went and left and played some pro ball, went over in Europe. And a big part of the reason why I came back to Maricopa was because of Thad Miller. I couldn't leave my big brother. I had to come back. And I wanted my kids to be a part of that. I taught in Gilbert. I know what their curriculum's about. It's one of the best schools in the state. But I'm a Maricopa boy. And I believe your education is what you put into it. And it's about the teachers. And the teachers that Mr. Miller and Mr. Abel put in that school build relationships. And I think removing him was a bad decision. Not maliciously, but I think it was a mistake. I know I'm not going to change minds right now, but I think by the end of the year, he really does need to go back. I think that needs to be done. Thank you. Real quick, I'm sorry, but Thad doesn't agree with this. Parents are needing volunteers at the junior high because there's been a lot of fights, and I've been there volunteering, but Thad does not agree with me doing this. I'm turning my volunteer badge in. I don't want to volunteer anymore if he's not there. He's the one who asked me to volunteer.
Next up, Aiden Balt.
Good evening. I'll be really quick. I'm Miss Aiden Balt. I am a teacher at MHS, and I'm also the MHS Gifted Liaison, and I wanted to come and invite you guys to the Gifted Parent Night on September 27th from 5:30 to 6:30 at Saddleback Elementary School. It's in room 132. We're going to be talking about some of the changes that we've implemented this year, included the Gifted Advisory Clusters at the high school. I heard that you may have a previous engagement that night, but I wanted to put the invite out there anyway. So, thank you.
Thank you. And next up, Julia Ivy.
She said Saddleback.
Yeah, Saddleback.
I just wanted to bring to you guys' attention the zero tolerance policy that the school district has, or the individual schools have, for fighting. I've seen recently several parents who their kids got in trouble because somebody else decided to beat them up. And the teachers weren't there to defend them or help the kids. And several of those kids, one boy, all he did was he couldn't stop the kid from hitting him, didn't want to hit him back, so he secured the kid using his back, just held him because the kid was swinging at him and hurting him. And he didn't fight back, he didn't hit the kid back, he tried to get away from him, he couldn't. I think it's kind of ridiculous that a kid can't defend themselves when the teachers aren't there to protect them. I myself went through that when I was a kid. I didn't do anything wrong. When the boy attacked me, I scored a goal on him in soccer. And he came at me, and because I was a girl, I had my hair in a ponytail, and he had me by my hair and was beating me up so badly that I was bled internally from my ear. He busted my lip. I was 9 years old. I'm 28 now. I still have the scar. My teachers weren't there to defend me. My school had a zero tolerance policy as well. I had to fight back. I got beat up for about 10 minutes before I fought back. I have inner ear issues. I've had several surgeries, about 14 of them on my ears. Before he hurt me that day, about 2 weeks before, I had had a surgery on my ear. I had to go to the emergency room because I was bleeding so badly afterwards. And then had to go to my specialist. They had to redo everything that they had done on the previous surgery. They tried to expel me because they had a zero tolerance policy, just like the school district does here. Luckily, my mother went to law school, and I didn't go and get suspended, but a lot of parents don't have that luxury. I feel that it is a case-by-case issue. You guys should not have a blanketed policy in any of your schools. My son's autistic. One of the reasons that prompted me to come was there was a boy who had autism who somebody attacked. I don't want that to be my kid. And I don't think it's fair to tell children you can't fight back, run away, because if they're adults and somebody attacks you on the street and you try to run away and they keep attacking you, you're going to fight back. And in the state of Arizona, we have the right to defend ourselves. Our children should have the same right. If the teachers aren't there to protect them, they need to be able to protect themselves and not be punished for it, because a suspension or an expulsion for something when they're defending themselves goes on their record, and it could keep them out of school. Smart kids, and they don't deserve that. So I think you guys should really reconsider that. And if I need a petition, I'll bring one in from parents.
Thank you. And just so everyone's aware, at the end of this, Dr. Chestnut will be following up with all the comments made at tonight's call to the public. So he will be getting back to you about that, okay? Our last speaker of the night is Henry Wade.
Thank you, Madam President, Dr. Chestnut, board members. I come today as a grandparent with students in the MUSD school system, one at the high school and one at Saddleback Elementary. And I have experienced as a parent, as a grandparent, my younger grandson, the 9-year-old, being attacked by kids in school and not being able to defend himself. He won't defend himself because he doesn't want me to chastise him for getting himself in trouble, even though he's not the one who started the activity. That's not the way I grew up. I grew up in South Central Los Angeles. We deal with each other right then and there. But I'm trying to teach him not to act in that way, to be responsible and to not cause problems. But unfortunately, with a zero tolerance, even if he's not causing problems, he's causing a problem because he just happened to be there. I understand the need. But when I read on our social media over 260 complaints or comments about zero tolerance, it tells me something's going on. It tells me there's an issue that needs to be delved into, a little more looked into. So again, I come as a parent, but I also offer my services as your city councilman. That if there is something that we need to do in order to provide security and safety for citizens, even if that citizen's 9 years old and autistic, then we need to do that. And so I appreciate the opportunity to come before you today in both capacities and offer the same to the parents out here who are concerned about their children, that if there's an issue, you come to me, send me the information. You can find me. I'm right there at City Hall. And so I appreciate it again, as I said. I'll make sure that I keep JoJo straight. I'll make sure I keep trying to teach JoJo to be a good citizen. But remember where I came from. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We are now at the superintendent's report, and Wizard in the back, we have an issue with one of our computers up here.
Thank you, President. Looks like our tech department is coming to the rescue, so thank you, Kevin.
It's dead. Well, no, he taped it.
Charging for a week. Week, I tell you.
Timeout.
You can go.
Oh yeah, it's not dead. It just fell asleep.
The power button's right there.
Smile and you're on TV.
Where's the cameras? I should notice. There they are. There you go.
Thank you. Okay.
President Coutret, members of the board, a few things to report on tonight. Great picture from City Hall the other night when the City Council declared Paint the Town Red Week, so thank you to the City Council for doing that. Nice annual tradition. The band was there. President Coutret was there on the far left. Thank you. I do want to address the issue that was spoken of briefly a few moments ago, the assistant principal switch between Maricopa Wells Middle School and Maricopa High School. I asked Thad Miller, assistant principal at Maricopa Wells Middle School, to move to the high school, and asked Mallory Miller, assistant principal at Maricopa High School, to move to Maricopa Wells. And both of them are highly competent, do very good work, as was mentioned earlier, and both have a tremendous amount of experience, and both do a very good job in their roles. Thad, as I think most people know, has been a long-time assistant principal, and for a few years we called that position TOSA at Maricopa Wells, and he's done a very nice job in that capacity. Mallory Miller, for the last 3 years, was the TOSA, which was the old name for assistant principal at Desert Wind. And so both of them are highly qualified to make that switch, and the switch was made because it's in the best interest of Maricopa Unified School District. The decision was not taken lightly. There was a great deal of thought and consideration that went into that, and yet that still was the best move for the good of the school district. And I understand that I received many emails from staff members at Maricopa Wells, and I replied to each of them and thanked them for their opinion. I respect that there can be differences of opinion on this, but at the end of the day, my job was to make sure that we made the best decision for Maricopa Unified School District, and that's what I did, and the reason I asked the two of them to switch. And I think safety was implied in some of the previous comments, and I can assure you that safety is the #1 priority of our school district, and our staff is very clear on that. And assistant principals obviously play a key role in that. Principals do as well, teachers do as well, support staff, classified staff members play a role. I like to remind staff at the beginning of every year that that's every staff member's highest priority, because we know that if kids don't feel safe, they're not going to learn. And if mom and dad don't think the school is safe, they're not going to send their kids there. And I was surprised to hear the comments also about zero tolerance. You will not find that phrase in our policies. We do not have a zero tolerance policy when it comes to fighting or altercations or aggression. Everything is based on the facts of the matter on a case-by-case basis. Now, I can understand how there might be some miscommunication on that issue, and I would encourage you to talk to the principal or the assistant principal about that, because each of those situations involves the specifics of that situation. And once again, that's an important safety issue at all schools, and I want to just encourage parents, if you have questions about that, talk to your teacher or talk to your assistant principal or your principal, and they have good answers on that, and they'll be glad to talk that through with you and explain how the discipline policy works and how our policy about fighting works and that kind of thing, and we follow it closely, but it is on a case-by-case basis, and like I said, there's no zero tolerance involved, and so you know, that's an example of the type of safe environment we want to create, where we work within policy and keep our schools safe, and I think our principals, assistant principals, our teachers do a really nice job of that. And when there are problems, I think they are dealt with appropriately. And if there is a case that a parent is concerned about, as I said, please talk to the teacher or the principal, and if you don't get satisfaction, you're more than welcome to call the superintendent's office, and we'll be glad to follow it up from there, because we do take those things very seriously. Moving on. Got some good news. Just the other day, our 2007 ACT scores are back, and as you know, there's two main tests that students take if they're thinking about going on to college or university level. ACT is one, and the SAT is the other. We don't have SAT results yet, but we do have ACT scores. Maricopa High School is the red bar, and you can see that we're above the state average in English, science, and reading, which is always a nice thing to be able to say. And we're 0.6 of a point below the state average in math. I think last year we were above by about that same amount, so every year is a little different group of students taking the test. But very proud of the fact that we got some good scores there, and our goal next year will be to be above the state average in all four, as it is every year. But the other thing that I'm very encouraged about and excited about is this, because this shows our ACT test takers for the last 5 years. And it's jumped around a little bit, but you can see there's a general upward trend there. We have almost 120 students taking the ACT this last spring, juniors and seniors. So these are students that are thinking about going on to college or university. And that's what we're trying to create. Maricopa High School is a culture where students are thinking about what comes next. For many of them, it will be community college, university. For others, it may be the military. It may be going straight into a career or a trade or technical school. But we know that some kids take that test even if they're going into the military or whatever. It's just that whole idea of challenging yourself academically, taking the coursework that's necessary. And we have some excellent Maricopa High School teachers sitting in the back row who are, you know, pushing this academic agenda and doing a really nice job. And we appreciate it. And we're seeing some good results. So keep pushing that agenda, please. Moving on, enrollment is always a big issue, and this probably is the last time I'm going to show you this slide because there's a lot of numbers here, a lot going on here. But you can see how enrollment ticked up a little bit, and we have a new all-time high for September, but I'll come back and talk about that in a moment. If you go down to the bottom line there on the left side, you can see that for MUSD, our actual enrollment on 9/8 was 6,697 students. And our projection was, in the bottom right-hand corner, 6,772. So we're about 78 short of what we projected, and then we historically continue to increase in the fall. So I predict that as of next month, we will be above our projected number, and so it'll be fun to see that happen. But you can see the difference between the actual number of kids that showed up and the projected, and it kind of varies, but we're down 12 total students at the elementary from what we projected. So far, and we're down 78 at the high school. That includes Ram Academy, down 24 at Maricopa Wells, and up 48 at Desert Wind. So it's nice to see the kids keep trickling in, the numbers keep growing, and it's a little more impressive on that chart right there. So that is a new September record for us, 6,697. Not a lot over a year ago at this time, but we're still ticking up, and as I said, I think it'll go up again next month. So that's exciting news. Enrollment growth is a wonderful problem to have, and I appreciate the staff's effort in managing that. It's not always easy, but we have really, it's been fun to see those kids show up in class this fall. Ram Academy progress, this is actually the same picture I had last meeting. There is more progress than this. The ramps are going in. And Mr. Roush has been working on this. We are now required to put in steel ramps that are ADA compliant and put in 2 of them. I think we planned to put in concrete originally, was that right? Or were they going to be wood? I've forgotten. They were going to be different. They were going to be easier to build than ordering steel ramps. So that's pretty much the last thing are the steel ramps, and then we will be into the portable for Ram Academy. Last time I checked with enrollment with Mr. Ibarra, there was 101 students in Ram Academy, so it's always nice to break that 100 mark. And so we're making it work out there, and it'll be that much better once we get the portable in place. Just want to remind you about homecoming week. It's here, so a lot of red and black around. Big week, big game on Friday night. Very exciting stuff. MEA rescheduled our quarterly meeting with the Maricopa Education Association. That meeting was yesterday afternoon. And this year we're doing it a little bit differently. The entire cabinet is meeting with representatives from the Maricopa Education Association. We had a very nice discussion, and we plan to continue to meet quarterly. Also on the 26th is the 8th annual MHS Booster Club Golf Tournament. I believe it starts at 8 a.m. at Southern Dunes. I thought it was the 26th. Well, I may have written the date down wrong. The 23rd. This is important because I'm playing in this, so I appreciate you reminding me. I could have sworn that was the date. Anyway, Aaron might have told me that, yes. And as you know, Aaron and I are determined to win this tournament. Mostly Aaron is determined because I'm not helpful in winning. But that is our goal this year. So we hope to have a big report in the future on how we did. We finished 3rd one year. Did I mention that?
You might have.
And that's all I have to report.
Thank you, Dr. Chestnut. Governing Board member reports. Mrs. Anderson, we'll start with you.
Lots happened. So last week I was at the law conference, Arizona School Board Association law conference, and basically we talked about all the new laws and policies that are coming down. One of the big topics this year was technology in the classroom and cyberbullying, and then another, I'll let Mr. Judd talk on what he attended, but there was another great session on hidden apps that are on your students' phones. Very interesting. Also, they can turn their phones on to record, but it's got the home screen showing. So, very interesting session that it might be worth having that come down and having them teach that to some of our parents, like a parent night. It was very, I was like, wow, I had no idea that was out there. So, it's way beyond Snapchat. This is stuff that all of our kids from 5th grade and up are using, and we as parents don't know about it. So that was the one takeaway for me. It was very interesting to get all the school board members in one place and to talk laws and talk how it affects our school, how it affects our classrooms. Another big topic was special education and how those laws are changing. So it was great information. And then Saturday, I chaired the legislative committee, and so we had our delegate assembly, which met on Saturday morning, and it was a pleasure to share that experience with Mr. Judd, but it was great. We do have a legislative agenda, so that'll be coming out, and so that'll give the teachers and parents an opportunity to know where they can be verbal and how they can get involved in some of our legislative process, because you have the power to change education, and we need to take that power back, and this is one way we can do it. So, I'm excited to give updates on that because that'll be coming out this fall. So, and then we'll get ready for the session, which starts about the end of January and goes through February and March. So, it's important that we get involved. So that was last week. This week, with homecoming, I did wear my red and black. As a Maricopa Ram alumni, we actually have a Facebook page. Didn't know that, did you? For our Maricopa Cheer and Dance Facebook page. Quite entertaining. So it's we'll be cheering at the game Friday night. That will be even more entertaining. And I have been practicing my cheers at home. The boys have been laughing at me, but that's okay. So it's just, it's fun to get involved in working with the cheerleaders. What a bunch of great girls. So it was just a nice opportunity to get to mix with some of the high school kids and some of the teachers, so I've really enjoyed that opportunity. And then tomorrow night will be the bonfire, and then Kelly will be playing in the alumni football game, which is tomorrow night at Copper Sky. So, so lots of fun stuff. So I'm excited to be a part of the community and be able to be a proud Maricopa Ram alumni. So high school's doing a great job.
Mr. Judd?
Lots going on, as Tori said. Last weekend spent mostly with the law conference on the 7th and 8th, and then the delegate assembly on Saturday. In the morning session that I attended, most of it had to do, and before I say this, I don't want anyone to get it up in arms about that I'm trying to bring any kind of uniforms back. But there was a lot of talk about the dress code, but it actually had to do with free speech issues.
Mm-hmm.
There was a particular Supreme Court case in which was called Tinker versus Des Moines, in which where does the students' right to free speech stop and begin. And there was some interesting information that was shared. I spoke with one of the superintendents, I believe it was from Buckeye, that ran into a legal challenge at their district and suggested some change to the language that goes a long way, I guess, in having in policy. So I always, anytime I go to a conference, I want to come back with something actionable, and that's what it would be for this one. In terms of the delegate assembly, I was delightfully surprised because I thought that was going to be a snooze fest, I must be honest. I thought I was going to sit there and just repeatedly hit yes on my transponder and agree with everything on that list, but it did not play out that way, and it got quite interesting, didn't it? With the call to the question.
Yeah, I taught him how to do call for the question.
Yes, that was wonderful. So a little parliamentary trick, but I will go back every year if you guys wish me to go back, and I actually kind of enjoyed it. I will definitely go. I did enjoy it. It got interesting. It was not the Seuss Fest that I expected, and I actually enjoyed it.
The debates are good.
Yeah, it was fun. I liked being in that environment. So, again, I'll talk more with Dr. Chestnut about that dress code issue and any kind of language that we can change concerning the policy. That's all I have to report.
Dr. Miller?
Yes, my plan, last year I went on I went to the transportation department and met with the transportation department and got a really awesome tour. So if none of you have done that yet, I would definitely encourage that. My plan is I have contacted Mr. Beckett, who's the supervisor of transportation, got the approval to go to the transportation department. This time what I want to do is actually I want to get on the bus and ride the bus just like our students do, and get that experience. So I thought that would be kind of lifting the ante this year as compared to just, visiting a facility. And so I definitely plan on doing that, and I will definitely report how that goes next time. Also, appreciate for everybody who came out here to speak, and I know that there, especially the issue of bullying is definitely deep to my heart, as it is also Councilmember Wade, with what you had expressed, and definitely appreciate that, because I know me growing up, I wasn't South Central, but South Florida was pretty tough too, and being a new student in most of the places I went and having red hair and glasses, I was always the target. So you kind of learn one way or the other. But I can understand for, about the zero tolerance policy, how that can be a little confusing, because my child a few years ago was being bullied after school, and the kid was probably about 3 times as big as him. And I do teach my children that if there ever is an incident, the first you go to, work it out with your teacher. Then work it out with your principal. And so in that case, he was attacked, and then afterwards,
We can't talk about that.
Why not?
It's not agendized, and it's not something.
Well, there's been a lot of things that are not agendized, they're still kind of being expressed.
But something like that that's been brought up by the call to the public, this is something that Dr. Chestnut, we can certainly, and I would hope that we're going to bring this back, and we can talk about it.
Well, I know that's good, but I know a lot of times that there's things that are not brought back. So I just would hope that, my whole point is that this is brought back, because I think it is a serious issue that needs to be dealt with, because I had the same experience as well. And so I definitely think that it should be something that just doesn't get pulled over. So I'll hold you to that.
Please do.
Thank you.
Mrs. Norm?
Sure. I just have a short report. I'm thankful for my colleagues who were able to attend the law conference. It is a great conference. Unfortunately, I had to go out of town for work, so I wasn't able to go, but it's great that you guys can bring back what you learned there and help improve our district, so thank you for that. And thank you, Josh, for volunteering to serve indefinitely as a delegate. You have my vote on that. I also want to thank everyone who came to Call the Public and all of those who've been emailing us and all those who always email us. We really appreciate your input, and as board members, you know, that's sometimes, one way we find out about what's going on. There's 9 schools. We can't be in all of them. We all have jobs and families as well, so we really appreciate you reaching out to us, because that's our job, to understand what's going on, to understand what the issues are in the community, how parents feel, how students feel, how staff feels, and to help, make everything work here within the district. So thank you. Don't ever hesitate to send those emails or to come to the meetings. And finally, I'm looking forward to homecoming. I'm going to be at the pep rally. And if I was on the fence, I'm certainly going to be at the game to watch Tori cheer. So looking forward to a Ram win on Friday.
It'll be chuckles, that's for sure.
And you'll have your pom-poms too, right?
Yes.
We don't get pom-poms, but I don't know, we might. We're lucky to get uniforms, so I'm just happy to have a uniform.
I'll be really impressed if they can flip you around.
She's skinny enough,
That'll
they
be
could.
good to see too. I'm just kidding.
Okay, just something that'll be on our next agenda, so you guys can kind of keep an eye on. We've had to cancel our ropes course. I know the media is going to be extremely disappointed because they were ready to come out there and take pictures of us. But so we'll bring that back at our next meeting, and so bring your calendars. And you said
Sometime in November.
November. So
When it's cooler.
kind of look at your calendars for November, and we need, I guess, at least a minimum of 10 people. So we were almost there. We were 1 shy. So we'll look at that. This was the first year that I haven't attended the law conference, which kind of felt weird. I just want to give a shout out and a congratulations to our attorney, Denise Lowell-Britt, who did receive an award during the conference. She's amazing, and we're so glad that she works with us. All of you should have received the invitation for the Pinal County meeting, which is Wednesday, September 27th, which is kind of why we rearranged our board meetings, which we'll talk about later. We just need to let Lisa know who will be going so that she can register you for it. So because I wasn't at the law conference, I was invited to go to the NT3 conference in Tucson with Dr. Chestnut and our amazing staff. And what a conference it was. I learned so much, and they actually let me think that I contributed something to it, but at one point it got way over my head. But it's really interesting to see these group of professionals get together and talk about, the teacher leadership and how important it is, and how Maricopa, we are there. We've got a great number of candidates for the National Certified Board. We've got a lot of teachers that have already received it compared to some of the other districts, and Maricopa was definitely a leader in that room, without a doubt, and we're so blessed to have them. And our mentoring program, we're going to be bringing some stuff back. We've talked to Dr. Chestnut about how to get the teachers more involved in the teacher leadership, and we're going to be hearing more from the teachers, especially around budget time, about mentoring and how important that is. And that's really a selling tool to retain our teachers, because we give them as much as we can in the paycheck, but sometimes to retain those teachers, it's more than the paycheck. So that was really interesting, and I want to thank them for allowing me to participate. It was a lot of fun and extremely knowledgeable.
Mrs. Coutre, the September 27th board meeting, we have not rescheduled that. That is still September 27th.
No, it's October 4th.
No. Mm-mm.
It is on our calendars.
That's an October board meeting.
Okay, well, that's an agenda item.
Yeah, the agenda item is
Yeah.
for October 4. I'm just pointing that out. It's not.
No, because I'll take a look, but I thought we had taken it off.
No.
Yeah, on the 27th.
It's not on the schedule.
Okay.
It's not on the 27th, but it's on the 4th.
It's on the 4th.
Okay.
We moved it because of
Okay.
the Pinal County meeting. Lastly, I do want to remind people, this Saturday, Costco school event, it's the Costco in Chandler, from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. If you go shop at Costco, they will give us 1 ream of paper will be donated to your school for every $100 that you spend. So I know how easy it is to go to Costco and spend $100. So if you need to go shopping, please do it on Saturday from 7 to 9 p.m. and get some paper for our schools, because I know it doesn't say that you have to have the flyer, but we'll make sure that it gets online so you guys can see it, okay? And then, as Mrs. Anderson said, we have Ramfest tomorrow night. It does start at 6 p.m. at Copper Sky. There's going to be booths, activities. That event is free, and it's a great family event. I believe the game starts at 7 or 7:30, and the bonfire will start between 8:30 and 8:45. What they usually do is they leave the basketball courts and they do a snake walk over to the bonfire. 7? 7 o'clock is the game? Okay. 7 o'clock is the game. So I like to go to the game and watch. It's kind of fun. Of course, Tori's husband, Kelly, he's an awesome player. He gets out there and rocks it. All right, I think that's all I have. So with that, we're going to go down to our information work study. Dr. Chestnut, the strategic plan.
Thank you, President Gutierrez. Members of the board, as you know, our tradition is that once a year we take a look at our action plans for the upcoming year. And those are in board docs tonight, and so if you can flip to that document, that's probably the easiest way to go through this. And Kevin, I know I didn't ask you to put that on the overhead, and I know it's hard to read on the overhead, but it's probably better than just looking at nothing for the audience. So you're welcome to put that up there, Kevin, if you are able to hear me and do that. So anyway, as you know, the first page includes our vision statement, our mission statement, and our belief statements. Those were developed back in 2013 with the full-blown strategic plan committee. And all of those represent consensus items, and a couple of you, I think, were on that committee, and that was a long process, but I think that that first page has kind of shown that stood the test of time. And then you probably noticed that in the document, one of the action plans is it's time to kind of reboot the whole plan. At least that's my recommendation. And generally, strategic plans are 3 to 5 years, and I think we've had 5 really good years out of this. And it'll be interesting to see once we revisit it what we do. I don't know, maybe it'll look a lot like the current plan, maybe we'll go in a different direction. I don't know, but I look forward to working on that project, and so that is listed. But our tradition is that we leave the first page the same, and then we just take a look at the rest of the pages. Likewise with the goals, so the goals 1 through 4, those represent the consensus items from 5 years ago, and those goals have served us well, right? Goal number 1, improve student learning, become an A-rated school district with each school achieving an A grade. And so we are still squarely focused on that, and it's gotten that much harder with the new Arizona College and Career Ready standards. AZ Merit Test is a tougher test, but we can still meet that standard eventually, and that's the goal. The other thing that we have done for the last 5 years really is we have incorporated in Goal 1 all the required strategies that are required by ADE in the ELITE plan. Krista does a nice job of completing all that online process for the district, and then for each school also has to have an ELITE school improvement plan that dovetails with the district plan. And so it's handy for us to make sure that our strategic plan follows our required ELITE plan so we turn into AD, so we can just make sure we're getting them done. And so that's true for strategies A, B, C, D, E, and F. And then strategy G is improvements visible to the community under Goal 1. And that's still a big, long list that I think is pretty important to the governing board and has been for several years. A lot of good things listed there. We try to make this a meaningful plan so that we're not just, putting small tasks on there, but important tasks. We've written them in a SMART goal format so that we can measure them and so that we can see who's responsible and then that kind of thing. So anyway, all that to say that the governing board really needs to look at the strategies, and we may not be able to finish well, let me rephrase that. Hopefully we can finish that discussion tonight, and then we can bring back the whole plan on the next agenda for final approval. So I know you've had a chance to look at this, and I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Are you going to go?
You can go first.
Okay. I don't have any questions. I just, as I'm reading through it, some of it seems kind of mediocre. you know, like the administrative, you know, training, the only measure is teachers will participate. I mean, it's, what's the outcome of wanting the teachers to participate in a future administrator mentoring or training program? I guess I just want to see more outcomes rather than what I'm seeing seems pretty basic. And I want to bump it up a notch. And I know we've had this discussion before, so that's my only comment, is I'm just, what I see is not good enough. I would expect more out of my students than what I'm seeing in the strategic plan.
Sure, I appreciate that feedback, and so maybe you could send me an email with some more specifics that you're thinking
Yeah.
of. I'd be glad to refine this a little bit, this first draft.
Yeah, I know this was just part of the ongoing conversation, but that's just my first impression after looking through it.
Wouldn't that be something that we could address as well if we go into an executive session? Because what I'm hearing you're saying is that you would like to see more as evidenced by.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily need to be an executive session. This stuff can be talked about. I mean.
It could be a work
it
session
could
or
be a
whatever.
work session.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
We
That's
can
fine.
continue on. We can do a special meeting if that's what you're looking for, where it's just focused on it. That would be up to the board if they wanted to do that. When you're talking about, Mrs. Anderson, about, you know, bumping those goals up, is that kind of like, I know we had talked before, does that mean like putting like numbers to it, like a certain percentage of teachers would participate in that?
Right.
Like
That's
a
what
number?
came up when we had discussed it last,
Yeah,
that
no.
we need
Something
something
measurable.
that's definitive and
So like
measurable,
that.
right.
I mean, you
Instead
could
of-
do numbers, but for me, it's more than, I mean, I would rather have, if only 5 people attended this mentoring program or training, I want to know they got something out of it. I want to know that we've got 5 future administrators. That's what I want. I want to see outcomes and measurable outcomes. So whether it's they complete it and they have their certificate after, you know what I mean? I just want to see more than just teachers will participate.
Yeah.
Well,
more.
in like strategy B too, it said K-4 teachers will be trained on DIBELS. So is that like 100% of the teachers will be trained on it? Or is it like, our goal is like 95? So, I mean, of course, I'm going with the 100, but, you know. So it's just, I'd like to see something like that, you know, some more quantitative goals.
It would be qualitative information. I mean, it's more of the frequency rates is what, you know, we'd be looking at in terms of what the frequency rates are, and that are realistic, you know,
Yeah.
frequency rates, then that could show like what the measurable outcomes would be based off those frequency rates.
Percentages of implementation, something like curriculum mapping, how many teachers showed
Exactly.
that? Because where it mentions the curriculum mapping, it just says teachers use curriculum map. Well,
But
what
it
does that
doesn't say
mean?
what group
How
teachers.
many of them are doing
Is it
that?
group B
Right,
teachers?
right.
Is it just
Exactly.
Who, what,
core
when, where.
teachers?
Just more specific, measurable
Yeah.
goals.
More meat.
We can do that.
Also, on the first page, in our belief statement, it says we believe in providing a safe learning environment, but I don't think we have enough goals that relate to safe learning environments.
Under the
positive, only one I see is the PBIS training.
Right.
So I would like to see some goals added in regards to school safety.
So
Is
like,
that under that strategy E then? Is that where that strategy?
it's on the first, on the belief statements.
Yeah, that would be conditions, climate, and culture.
Okay.
And I mean, okay, an emergency response plan is great, but I'm talking about like day-to-day safety.
Right.
So
In
kind of
terms
like
of the
with
fighting
our
and
SRO
issues.
and.
Right,
and-
yes.
and-
Painting the picture of what that really looks like.
Right.
Yeah, that's easy enough. Yep.
So that's, I didn't mean to open up a can of worms, but that's my
No.
opinion.
No, that's good feedback.
Okay.
I'd be happy to bring this back.
Cool.
Does anybody have any other suggestions or comments that we'd like to see on this? So, Dr. Chestnut, one of those goals it says in the first one, let me get back to that page. Goal 1, strategy A2, develop an updated 5-year plan. So do you want the board to, are you looking to convene another committee, or are you just looking for feedback from the board on this?
No, the intent of that was to say we would start from scratch and go through a process similar to the one we went through 5 years ago and revisit the entire plan.
So you're looking at establishing a committee.
That's what I'm proposing, yes. But if there's difference of opinion,
What do you guys-
this is the time to say.
What do
I
you guys
think-
think about that?
I think that's worth an additional session.
Okay.
I do. Would it be possible to have a timeline of like when we want to get this accomplished by, kind of like a step-by-step? I know that would help me better, because I know it's, would it be September of 2008 that this goes through?
There's a timeline column on all of those items. So that
Says-
particular one,
yeah.
for example, the goal would be to finish that committee by March 1st.
March.
Mhm. Right. But would it be possible to kind of spill, I mean, I guess we can kind of look at that, but I mean, I don't know if you have anything different in terms of what you want to get accomplished on a certain timeline. I know that would help us, kind of guide us along in terms of when we'd have a work study and to have some of this accomplished by.
Well, our model that we have used is that strategic plan is not written entirely by the board, and it's
Right.
not a board
Right.
committee. It's a stakeholder, community-wide committee, and last time we did it, I believe we had 2 board members on there. I think Tori was on there. And that's the process I'm proposing. And then we purposely did not bring it to the board until the committee had finished its work, and then it came as a proposal to the governing board.
Right.
Now-
And then those committees would be part of that timeline as well, as when, not just us, a timeline for us, but a timeline for the whole process, is I guess what I'm,
Yeah, we
I'm
would need to see
wondering.
with the teachers be able to get their hands on it, what they produce, and then I think we would basically be going off of the production of what the teachers wanted to see.
Well, when he talks about a committee, it'll be teachers,
And
certified,
stakeholders,
it'll be
administrators.
community
Right.
members,
Right, right.
It will be a couple of board members. It would be nice to have a couple of different board members doing it this time around. Then it's brought back to the board. And then at that point, we may want to schedule just a separate work study session.
Just for the board.
Just to deal with that, so that then we will approve this, but we'll take the input from the committee, just kind of like how we do with the budget committee. That budget committee continues to meet, and then at the end, when they're done, they present what they find, and then the board, we talk about it, and then the board decides how they want to go forward. So that's kind of similar what we would do with this committee as well.
Agree with Dr. Miller that we would need a timeline, because once they get finished up, we're going to need to touch base
Exactly.
and do
Exactly,
our
and that's why-
research
yeah,
before that.
And that's why
yeah.
his goal right now is to have it done to the board by March 1st.
right, but there's a lot of pinpoints in between.
Right, but that's,
Now and
yeah,
then
that would be the committee.
Help for, I think, for the whole process to, have a good picture painted.
I think the challenge with this plan is that there's about 10 major projects on here.
Yeah,
And we need the green light to get started on those 10
Yeah.
major projects. And if you want us to write up the detailed project to have this approved, it's going to be cumbersome and take a long time to get the big picture plan approved so we can start working on the details of implementing the big picture plan. I'm just saying that's a reality. Now, we certainly have a rough idea of how that strategic planning committee will work. I'm just saying that's a project in and of itself to prepare those agendas and that the details of that. But my hope would be that the board could authorize the major projects, and then we can start moving forward on them, and bring you the detail, of course, on each one as we work on them.
so my one more question. Why do we need so many strategies under each goal? It just seems like there's so many things that I wish in this next go-around that we really focus. And I mean, some of these are just, there's just too many. It's just, I mean,
Well,
it's,
some of them have to go with the ADU.
I understand
That's
that.
the strategy one, that has the most of them.
Well, I
I'm just
still-
saying, can we look at that
Yes.
as, because that's, I mean, you've got all the way to strategy Z almost in some of these, and it's kind of like, let's,
I hear you. I think it's a good point. We'll work on that.
yeah, because if I were a teacher, even as a parent, if I looked at this, I would be like, so overwhelmed, I'd put it in the closet and shut the door.
I agree. We can look at that.
Okay.
Okay, so Dr. Chestnut, what more do you want from us?
Well, I realize there's a lot in here, and if you have feedback, send me an email with thoughts, and then I'll try and get a draft out early on this, and we can get the dialogue going on this. Keep the dialogue going until we get it where we
Yeah.
like it.
Okay. Any other comments? Fantastic. Great start. All right, item B, review monthly financial report. Mr. Roush, that would be you.
you, President Coutray, members of the board, Dr. Chestnut. Briefly, we have about a 15-page document, and this is our June report. It's not an accrued-based report, meaning it's more of a cash basis until we finalize our journal entries. So it's, and we will do that all the way until October with our AFR. So with that, it is a snapshot of some of the accounts until we do finish our journal entries and whatnot, and we're doing that right now. So, you have any questions on the budget finance pages at all?
I do.
That included the memo, so hopefully that explains some of it.
Yeah, it explains it. I just, and I don't need answers tonight, but I'm just curious as to, on page M2, the very last paragraph, it talks about lines EP 1, 2, and 3. I'm just, that's a huge emergency expense. I mean, is this equipment that we knew was getting ready to fail? Because those spot coolers, were those the ones for the high school?
I can go
Culinary?
over those.
I don't need all the details for tonight. I just want to know, do we have a plan so that we're not doing these emergency purchases because they get very costly? Is there a maintenance plan that we're keeping up with?
Overall, we have not a maintenance plan, but specifically, I think it'd be helpful just to go over these since it's in the report. You don't have to approve these. We just
Right.
have to identify those. That's part of what we have to do legally. So in identifying those, we hired Shade Tree Mechanical as under an emergency situation to go into our culinary building. They were recommended to us by the trust to try and get some of our HVAC units going. Along with that, we did purchase. We thought it would be very a good purchase, and it has worked for us. Individual portable coolers, and so when we have had our HVAC,
Those are the spot coolers? Spot coolers?
Yes.
Right.
Right, and which have been very effective. They're 1 ton or more, which that's just kind of how they describe it. And when a compressor goes out, we can bring those into the classroom. And we purchased a good amount of those. What's happening throughout the district as we age, our units are aging, and as we get into the buildings and we have them pretty much on a lower setting, it's when the staff does that then get into those buildings, and then we find that they aren't quite up to speed. So I think that's very helpful, and then this became really useful for us. Now we try and test all of those, but we have limited staff. We have about 650 units, and sometimes, say, 400 or more haven't really been used to a high degree. So when we do then put them up to a full capacity, and some of these are 12 to 15 years old, just like our units at our home, they fail. So we want to be able to have these units that come in, cool the space. So that was that emergency purchase. Okay?
No, I understand that. My question was, how do we avoid doing an emergency purchase? I mean, I just want to know that there's a plan in place, because I know the culinary room, since you brought it up, was out of AC for a very long time, going clear back to last year. And I know that there were reports put in from several high school staff, repair reports put in. I just want to know, how do we speed that process up? And so that we're not having to do this emergency purchases.
Well, that's a good question. Some of those units were quite a few years old. We started going through the process with the SFB in May, and the SFB has a process that they will not pay for anything unless it's failed. Okay, not if it's failing, if it's failed. So we started that process and hoped that it would have been a lot faster, but the School Facilities Board is a little bit of bureaucracy. Ended up being about a $70,000 issue. So we could have just spent that out of our own funds, or we could have asked for help. And so, you know, we thought we could get it done a little bit quicker, and that's what we did for that. And we wanted to have some emergency air in that case. SFB did finally, in their last board meeting, approve about $70,000+, so we don't have to take it out of our own budget. So the last one is a emergency purchase for plumbing. What we're finding is our plumbing has been in different parts of the building. The mixing valves, just because of the hard water, has been an issue. We don't have a plumber on staff, and we did contract that out. We wanted to do it pretty quickly, and so we did an emergency contract for several different mixing valves. So that's what that was. A way to possibly affect that in the future is to probably hire a plumber. So. But thank you for the opportunity to go over those.
To give you a hard time?
That's okay.
I'm good at that, huh?
That's all right.
Thanks, Aaron. Those were only questions I had on the report.
Okay. Thank
Anybody
you.
else have any other questions for Mr. Roush? Thank you, Mr. Roush.
Motion to approve.
You don't have
Oh,
to.
we don't have to vote.
No.
No, that's okay.
I wanted to give you a
I know,
motion if you
you're
needed it.
excited to get through this. Okay,
Yeah.
so we're at the consent agenda, so do I have any motions?
Motion.
I would,
Oh, you have something?
yes, I would like to take item E off the consent agenda and move to action item.
That, we can't do that. That has to be done at the beginning when we adopt the agenda.
So why was it put on consent agenda when we left it at our last meeting that this would be addressed instead of being blanketed now? So I guess I didn't realize that I couldn't take it off the consent agenda until at the moment we
Yeah,
got to the
that's-
consent
yeah.
agenda.
Um,
So can I ask why that hasn't been addressed and before? Because that's where we left it, that would be addressed.
What we
And it
can do,
hasn't.
what we can do is we can go ahead and we can motion to approve the consent agenda minus that item. And then we can table, then basically we won't do any action on that item, and then we can put it as an action item at the next board
At the
meeting.
next agenda.
Yes.
Ms. Gutierrez?
So that would be like he's taking it out, like you just asked. I don't think we
Yeah,
can't
but
do
I-
that, because we approved the agenda already.
So we can't,
No.
okay.
Well, just point of information, after the discussion at our last meeting, I tried to capture the input, and this is my proposal on how to move this forward. I think that Dr. Miller is correct that this was our mistake. We should have put this back on a first reading, I think, because I don't think we had come to any consensus on the first reading last time.
Correct.
So,
So can we just approve this as it is right now, but then at the next agenda,
Bring
bring
it back.
back?
put this back on as
Bring
a first
back,
reading next
yeah.
time, I think that'd be fine, because
Yes.
this was an error on my part in asking Lisa to put it on the consent agenda. I just realized that.
So even if we approve this, we'll still bring it back at the next meeting and start the process over.
Okay.
Because this is the language that I want the board to look at and review and discuss to make sure you like it, because I think it's the solution. I think it summarizes what we talked about at our last meeting, but you're right, it got put in the wrong category.
You mean in the language that's there now?
The underlying new
Or
language.
the new language, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So what we'll do is, we'll get a motion and we'll vote on this, and then at the next meeting, we'll start it over again with the first
Right.
reading
Of that
specific.
policy.
And then we can make changes to it, and then we can go through the same process.
Okay.
Okay? All right, so I had a motion to approve by Mrs. Nord. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Action item 7A, discussion and possible approval of the HR schedule. Mr. Beckett.
Thank you, President Gutierrez, members of the governing board, Dr. Chestnut. You have the personnel schedule in front of you tonight. It is a lengthy one. I can take your questions at this point in time if you have any.
I don't necessarily have a question, but I just want, for the record, Dr. Chestnut, I've discussed with him my concern about excessive stipending, and he has talked about putting a committee together to review our stipend system overall, and maybe remove some or add some or whatever is needed. But I want to say that before I vote on this, because I think we need to make some changes to our stipend system.
Is that in reference to overload, the overload
Yes.
stipends? I agree with that.
Yes.
The overload stipends, or are you
Yes.
talking about the whole stipends? Because we had a committee last year that went over the
The
whole
stipends.
schedule.
Overloads.
Just overloads. So
Overloads.
you're looking at a committee
Right.
that deals with overloads.
Overloads.
Well, you know, some of these are
It-
paid for grant.
It
out
doesn't
of
matter.
grant.
I mean,
Okay,
I just think
'cause
they need to be.
I agree with
grant
Ms.
money.
Nor, because
Yeah.
what it shows is that it's almost like we have errors in terms of how we're handling the amount of kids that we have, and this is our correction to that every time. And the more and more we have, it just doesn't show good planning. So I think, that I agree with you.
And I mean, I've always been one to really comb through the stipends system. And I think that before we had the override, we probably used stipends, and we really needed to in a lot of situations, but I think we're in a new era. And we're raising, teacher pay, and we're reducing class sizes, and we're providing more staff. And I think that that needs to be reflected, and maybe some of the former practices don't need to carry forward.
Okay.
And just as a point of information, that committee is listed on the action plan list for,
Great.
we looked at earlier.
Yeah, there should be essentially be a mirror between class reduction from the override and the amount of stipends that we have. And I noticed that we're not seeing the same level of reduction as we are seeing with the reduction in class sizes. At least it doesn't look that way to me.
Right.
Are there any other questions or comments for Mr. Beckett? Do I have a motion for this item?
Motion to approve the HR schedule.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 7B, discussion and possible approval of the Arizona School Board bylaw amendments. Mrs. Anderson, you were going to bring us,
Up to speed.
No, I already did. What do you mean, bring you up to speed?
so you guys.
So it's written as
it's
we
written,
proposed.
So are you guys, any discussion, any additions, wordsmithing?
Question,
Absolutely.
as I'm reading it. So now that we've done the delegate assembly and we've run into a snafu where one of the items, because in the bylaws it says 2/3 of a vote, do you remember that item, first item? And there was not quite 2/3 people voting.
Really?
Yeah. So, and so it failed because only 60 people voted and we needed 63.
Right.
So I'm just, do we just want to say majority, or do we want to leave that 2/3 in there? Because it does say 2/3 by the participating. I'm just,
You know,
What's your recommendation?
I would do majority.
I would like to see majority, but I don't know that the
That's
membership will
going to be
pass it.
possible because of past behavior
Yeah.
patterns.
Chances, I mean, every time somebody's tried to bring an amendment to
I
this,
know.
it has failed. I mean, we're just going to propose it. I mean, and that's what we
all we
can
can
do.
do.
But I agree with Mrs. Anderson. I mean, to be 3 votes shy because it's not 2/3, but it's obviously a majority of the boards that are represented, I think it should be majority vote instead of a 2/3.
But maybe we should take baby steps.
Yeah. Well, I think that's kind of what we talked about.
Yeah.
But let's just see if we can get this 2/3 by the participating voting.
Yeah, member boards
Right.
voting, yeah.
Okay. I'm good with that.
Any other comments, wordsmithing? Does it look good?
So now, does Lisa submit this to,
As after we vote on it?
To
If we-
ASBA?
If we, yes, if we
Okay.
vote to approve it, she needs to do that tomorrow. No pressure, Lisa.
If there's no further discussion, I'll motion to approve.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Fantastic. Okay, item 7C, and this is the discussion and possible approval of rescheduling the October 4th board meeting date. Originally, we had scheduled October 4th because we knew September 27th was going to be the ASBA Pinal County School Board meeting. So we had moved it to the 4th. And now Mayor Price has scheduled his State of the City on a board meeting night.
okay, so I have a question on that. I thought we moved it because we didn't want the board meeting to be during break?
That too.
That too.
Okay.
I mean, but it all kind of corresponded together.
Okay, I didn't think it had anything to do with the September meeting. I
No,
thought it
it
was
did,
just
it did
October.
when Lisa and I sat down and looked at the dates, because we'd gotten the dates during the summer leadership,
Right.
so.
We don't have to go to
Or
the
no.
Pinell County ASBA thing. I'm just saying. I'd rather do a board meeting.
I think we've been pretty well represented this year in terms of at those ASBA conferences so far. Just something to
Is
consider.
anybody getting an award? They haven't told me. Usually they tell me. So would you guys prefer to have that meeting on the 27th then instead of the October 4th? Because I know I'm planning on attending the State of the City.
And then that would only give us one in October, which would be on
Right.
the 25th.
So moving the October 4th meeting
Back to the 27th
back
and
to
only having
September
one meeting
27th. I'm
In
okay with
October.
that.
And do we have any business that needs to be taken care of in October that?
Uh-oh, Mr. Roush has a hand up.
Yes, we do. See, because that week before you have to have it done, Mr. Roush, that's
Is
fall
break.
break.
Yeah, that's fine.
But we could have a, you know,
Special meeting
a
is-
special meeting at
yeah.
7:30 in the morning and make it a 2-minute meeting or something.
Okay, so what we can do, if you guys, if what I'm hearing correctly, we're going to 86 the 4th and change that to the 27th. And then at the next board meeting on the 27th, we will have to look at a date of a special meeting during fall break to approve the financial
Right.
report.
Perfect.
So,
And let's just make sure that that's updated on the website as well.
Lisa will make sure of it. So, do I have a motion
Motion
to do?
to move the October 4th meeting to September 27th.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Okay, so now we get into the fun stuff. Discussion and possible approval of the first reading of updated policy GCQC, resignation of professional staff members. Dr. Chestnut?
All 5 of these policies are updates from ASBA.
This one?
Mhm.
Not this one.
I thought it was this whole
No,
slate
this-
of
this-
policies.
This is our,
This is one we've been talking about.
yeah, this is one we've been going over and over and over.
Well, now, I'm the one that's confused here.
This one is the one we talked about where basically what we're looking at is the liquidated damages section of this. And
Right, and I keep getting this one and the one on the consent agenda confused. That's my problem.
so on this one,
Yes.
we changed
The dates.
the dates to first student day,
Yeah.
instead of having the
Looks good.
specific date, and took out the word shall to may. And then there was a paragraph added.
Right, and the paragraph added was, I'm sorry, I got those two confused. This was what I've heard the board be in agreement on, that I believe addresses the issue. I think the issue that's been controversial has been the HR recommendation that would be a zero assessment for professional advancement. And I think there's been unanimous agreement that that part needs to change. I think that the other recommendations that Mr. Beckett adds on there for things like illness or mutually beneficial with no fees, those kind of things, haven't been controversial. And so this is the language that I would propose in the policy to address the fix.
As I recall that conversation, I thought that that was the part that was controversial.
Mutually beneficial.
Yes.
Not but yeah, by members.
Well, yeah, I mean, yes, there was discussion. My feeling was there
I'm not
was,
saying that there necessarily needs to be a change, but I know that that was the conversation, that was the aspect that was controversial.
yeah, my theory was this represented a majority view. I'm sorry. Yeah, there was definitely discussion on this item.
Yes.
Part of the reason that some of this has come up is because of the people that have left for professional, for promotions, basically, outside of the district. And so that's why that was put in there. Because we have pretty much said, that's good, congratulations, and we wish you the best. However, you signed a contract with us. So,
Wasn't there also discussion about setting a distance limit?
well,
When they're moving.
Right.
Yeah, we did
and,
talk about
and
that.
I think we got, originally that was going to be in a regulation.
Right.
And I think that, and after hearing everyone speak about it, they preferred that everything be in policy. The thing is that everything is going to kind of be relative when it comes to the, I mean, that's why it's brought to us to discuss, and that's why the information is sent to us, so that we can make those informed decisions. So there's always going to be a situation that we may not cover in a policy. But we know that the one thing that we did all agree on, that we had talked about, was the fact that, you know, if they resign for advancement, that we would not waive those. But that's what. But
If you leave, you leave.
You leave, you leave. But if you look up at the paragraph above it, it says the governing board reserves the right to waive provisions of liquidated damages. And
I feel like we've
make
gone in a big, huge circle. I don't know if anyone else feels that way, but I feel like what's been included here, I don't remember
It's the
that
same.
being a big issue.
Yeah.
And I don't think that anything that we discussed that
solve
was an
anything.
issue
It's
was
gonna resolve
changed.
anything, no.
Right.
I just,
This, to be perfectly honest, what's underlined really doesn't need to be in there.
No, because it's already
It's saying
stated.
that, right, it's already stating it. And it's saying that even if you leave for this reason, we're still going to apply the fee. That shouldn't really need to be stated
Right.
if it's already stated once. I don't
I
know,
agree.
I wouldn't be ready to vote on this
I was
this
thinking the
evening.
same thing. I'm like, okay, well, all I want to see is consistency.
Yeah,
You know,
and I don't
I
see,
just
I
want to
just see
see
this making
consistency
it worse.
at
clear-
the
a
wishes
clear
of the
framework.
board. I just want to see consistency. If you leave, here's the assessment fees if it's within these time period.
I agree.
So, you know, we shouldn't have to make up extra rules. It's already in
Yeah.
policy. So I just want to see the policy enforced, like it's written. That's all I want to see. So I don't know if the board has to give a directive to HR.
Because I think that's
but-
right, and that's where it started. We were questioning consistency issues. That discussion led to, let's show that consistency in the policy, but
Right.
now I'm not seeing any of that reflected here.
I think it's true that we could leave the policy as it is without that underlined paragraph, and I think that
Right.
we could meet the objectives that we've been talking about, kind of in a big circle, you're right, because there's not some clear-cut answers on how to word that, but I think that we have the direction from the board on how to implement this policy, and you're right, I think we could do it without
Yeah.
that paragraph.
I agree.
But if I'm hearing correctly, the board wants those exceptions in the policy, or no?
That's up for
What
discussion,
exceptions?
because that may not be the consensus for
Well,
everyone. I'm saying
The
from my perspective.
exclusions.
Right.
Exclusions from that, like illness, movement, moving
We-
away. Is that what I'm hearing, that you guys want that in policy, or you just want to take out that last paragraph and leave it as is, with the exception of the changes to the dates and the?
I can only speak for me. I would like to see that distance, because saying that someone's moving, if they're moving to Chandler or Gilbert, I don't think that should be where an assessment is waived. They're easily within driving distance of Maricopa, so that shouldn't be held as an excuse.
But is that
We
something
can
you
come
want
up
in
with something.
policy?
I think so, because I think that's a big factor. That's one of the things that we run into most.
Well, especially if we want consistency.
Right.
That's been my challenge, when we do this, is it just doesn't seem, very consistent. And I know for me, it's just having those inclusions and exclusions of what it really means, to waive it or not to waive it.
And I think
having
where
it,
we got stuck in the weeds on that, we all agreed that, yes, for family illness or if they, or caretaker.
Yes.
Okay,
Right.
that was,
Yes.
if they move far away, obviously not within a commutable distance. And the last one that we got stuck in the weeds was with those mutually agreed upon
Right.
resignations. And so,
But that's taken out. I don't see that in here.
no, none of it, all of it's out.
None of it's in
None
here.
of it's,
Yeah.
none of it's in. And what I'm hearing is, from Mr. Judd, is that he would like to see it in policy, written in the policy.
I think that those inclusions, and I would like to have Mr. Beckett chime in case it hampers him or makes his job more difficult at all by including that. Of course, I'm going to, listen to his input on that, but I think a distance limit, just to be honest, makes sense.
Well, I'll let Mr. Beckett have a shot at this, but maybe I'll go first. I just think that what Ms. Cottret started at the beginning by saying is every situation is different. It's hard to have a laundry list that covers every situation, and we would have to have a list about 10 pages long to get about 98% of them, but then we'd still have 2% hanging out there. And that's the problem, I think. I think the thing that's good about our current policy, if we don't make any changes, is that my opinion is it's worked pretty well without controversy, except for the professional growth advancement thing. And I think that that's my opinion of how the discussion has gone. But Mr. Beckett may have a different opinion, I don't know.
Thank you, President Cottret, Member Judd. I agree totally with Dr. Chestnut. I think the policy is broad enough that gives us the latitude to be able to make the recommendations to you, that you will ultimately have the decision to make on that. We can provide more information if you need that before you make a final decision on whether you're going to assess or not. I agree. If we put 50 miles in there and somebody moves 52 miles away, all of a sudden we're not assessing because of 2 miles. I think there's some real dangers when we get into that kind of specific language in a policy. Again, a regulation maybe would be more appropriate for this, but I think that's the whole idea about a policy. It's a nice, broad, overarching look at an issue and addressing it. So personally, I think keeping it vague, I shouldn't say vague, but general, helps the district to make compassionate decisions sometimes.
That's the sticking point. It's, do we want to be compassionate or do we want to be consistent? Because you can't have it both ways.
Well,
And I think that, to be honest with you, I think that setting a distance limit, if someone's outside of that 52 mile an hour, or that 52 mile radius, they're outside of that 52 mile radius, and that's the policy. And we're sorry, but that's the policy. And that's going to breed consistency. But if we want to be compassionate, if you guys go all the way back to the meeting where I said I didn't want to assess, I only want to assess that fee in very rare circumstances where a teacher is leaving us in the middle of the school year, I'm fine with that. But we're going to be inconsistently compassionate without those guidelines.
And I could just say as a human resource manager, that is my job. We are constantly faced with the dynamics of unusual, difficult choices to make, and it isn't easy sometimes for me to make the decision whether I'm going to recommend an assessment or not. I do try to put, again, myself in that position when I would want to be fined $2,500 because I'm moving 52 miles away or I'm moving 2,000 miles away.
Like I said, I agree with you. I don't think it should be assessed except in rare circumstances, and that was my point at the very beginning. But the problem is, if we're going to assess the fine and it's not in policy, then we're going to get hit with the tag that we're being inconsistent. And that's my only point on it. If we want to leave it as is, and that's okay, but we had this whole discussion last time, and I don't think what we discussed was reflected in the change of the policy.
Except the first school day.
And that, right, that's in there.
And the shall to the
That
may.
was in there in the shall to may.
And
So
the
we
shall to the may.
knocked that out of the park.
We got
But the
that.
rest of it, I don't think reflected what we discussed. That's my issue with that.
So, what is the consensus of the other board members as far as putting those details in for what the exceptions would be to the liquidated damages?
Well, I know for me, the difficulty that I've had since I've been on board is that, it's not necessarily about your recommendation. It's more of looking at your recommendation and then for us to decide, and there's been on more than one occasion where your recommendation may be one and then the board goes a different way. And so there isn't clarity, at least for me as a board member, the clarity of what, again, what those inclusions are, what the exclusions are, in order for us to be consistent. Now, I understand from an HR perspective, it's nice to have, you know, a broad view, so that gives you more leadway, but for us, you know, personally making the recommendations, to me, it's just really confusing when I'm going with your recommendation, but then the other board members are saying, no, so that's the area that I'm struggling with since being on the board.
And I'm not trying to add to the complexity of this, but the board always has the prerogative to go into an executive session. If you need to know further details about a situation that aren't being addressed through the information that you have presently, that's your prerogative. We would then have to make sure that that employee is notified they're going to be talked about in that session, and then you can make your decision based upon that interaction. It's just the level of detail that we're able to provide in a public setting is limited.
So here's my proposal. We take out the underlined paragraph that Dr. Chestnut worked so hard on. The last paragraph already says, the governing board reserves the right to waive the provisions of the agreement for liquidated damages, to impose an alternative condition upon its approval, or to deny approval, if, in the opinion of the governing board, such action is appropriate given the specific circumstances presented. I think that right there leaves it up to us as a board to be consistent. And I think that this is great discussion because now we know all 5 of us are on the same page. But I think if we take that last paragraph off and just leave the one I just read, you know, and then the last one is the policy is not intended to replace or substitute any other right or action available to either party under the law. I think we keep it very basic and just hold ourselves accountable that we will be consistent. Does that help, Mr. Beckett? I mean, because when we start listing details, guess what? The more rules you put on it, the more rules you have to make, and the more rules get broken, and the more rules. I mean,
I agree with that statement, but what we're going to have to do is go to one extreme or the other. It's either going to, the decision needs to be entirely left up to the board without conditions in the policy.
Yeah, just put it in there.
Or we need to have some very established and concrete policies. But I think where we're choosing certain things that we want to focus on or not, that's where we run into the weeds. So I'm completely fine with having the policy, it's case dependent, and the decision is left up to each individual board member. I'm fine with that. Yes. But we had certain things in policy that was creating confusion. So do one or the other. We can get super specific with it, or we can leave it completely vague and leave it up to, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but leave it opaque. That has a less negative connotation. We'll leave it opaque, and then we can discuss it, and just we're on our own to make those decisions.
I mean, I like the way it's stated now because it doesn't specifically list individual circumstances.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it doesn't.
We can take out the bottom paragraph and leave it as is, and that's fine.
But there will still be some, you know, I still think that there will be some things that won't be clear. And then what about in the future, you know, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, for other board members, you know, having struggled
well, then
with
those
the
board
same
members
thing
can have the same discussion.
That's the other part of it, though, but I agree with Dr. Miller saying, when we do that and there's changeover in the board, it's essentially kicking the can down the road, because now when you have new board members coming in, maybe they don't think in the same way that the rest of the board members do, and you won't maintain that consistency.
But then that's their right as a board member to vote how they feel.
Okay.
I mean, to be honest, I mean, that's why we're all here, and we're not all here to be yes board people. We're here to vote on what we think is best for the district. And, you know, that might agree or that might not agree, and you don't know who's going to be sitting in this chair next term around.
But you do need to remember, too, that all the policies we review every year, hopefully. And so it gives that new board the opportunity to have that discussion and come to their interpretation as a board, because this interpretation is going to be very different in 2 years or 2 years ago than when we first had the discussion.
It does, and that's true, but it's
beauty
going
of it.
to breed inconsistency, and we just have to be ready for that.
Well, the one thing that's not going to be inconsistent because we've put in there, at least is the date and the amounts. I mean, that is something that, we have in
Right.
there.
And we've taken out the exceptions, so that leaves
Yeah.
it open for HR to assess the fee and then
Or not assess
bring it
the
to the
fee,
board.
bring it to the board, yeah.
All I know is like whenever I go from point A to point B, I need a roadmap, a compass, something to guide me so that, because sometimes, when I assume something, then, that's usually when I'm, get it wrong. So for me, again, more detail, more of kind of spelling it out helps me. And then this has probably been one of my biggest challenges thus far on the board. And then also, I just think that would be, clarify, especially down the road for future board members to help them so they don't, go in circles as well. So
I would like to research what other districts' language and/or regulations are in this arena and find out, because I know a lot of districts are assessing fees. Most of them are. And so, I mean, it never hurts to go to your peers and say, what are you doing? And how are you doing it? And maybe they're doing it worse than us, and maybe they're doing it better than us. But, there's a lot of other people dealing with this. And I would like to go, have maybe Mr. Beckett, do a survey of, several school districts and find out what their policies are and regulations, because they could have, regulation underlying the policy. So we can really look at, and
I
see
think
if
that's
there's.
really easy to do off of the board docs. In the policy, you can do a policy search and.
The search,
Yeah.
it allows it,
and
right.
search-
yeah.
And search that policy.
While we have them here and we're in the discussion, have you come across any other districts' policies that are similar, or if you've looked at that previously?
Thank you, Member Judd. I think you're going to find there's a lot of consistency with our policy and most others that are assessing liquidated damages. I personally have not seen the level of specificity that I'm hearing the board talk about in policy itself. But again, it's a great suggestion, Member Norm. More than willing to pull some data together to show you some data of what other districts are doing. So we can do that.
Thank you. And like I said, the regulations too,
Thank you.
because their policy could mirror ours, but they could have regulation that further advances it.
Exactly.
So,
So, does the board want to take any action on this, or do we just want to?
Sounds
bring
like
this back?
tabling it.
Bring it back?
Just bring it back.
We can just bring it back. We just don't have to do anything on it.
So can I throw another thought out there? And I know I threw it out there before.
Certainly.
Why not just take the liquidated damages off?
no.
We don't
No.
do it.
No.
And then we reward our teachers for those that stay here.
Well, we do that already with retention.
I'm just throwing it out there because.
I would be willing to look into that and research if there are
I-
any
I
districts
would rather
doing something
reward
like that.
good
Because I've thought about
behavior.
the same thing.
Yeah,
That it's a
I'd rather
negative
reward good
reinforcement
behavior.
kind of thing, and what's to say
Yeah.
that we can't have a paradigm shift and we start it in Maricopa?
Yeah.
Are there any other districts around the country that are doing it that way? It's nothing, it doesn't
you're
hurt,
talking about if
doesn't
they
harm us to
resign?
look, or some incentive
So-
for retention.
We do
A
that.
retention bonus.
But maybe we need
Yeah,
to
but-
bump that up.
yes.
And take, and not do the liquidated damages. I mean, unless we see that all of a sudden.
I'm not saying that
okay,
that's what we're
oh.
going to do, but I'm saying, along with Ms. Norris researching what the
Yeah.
districts are doing around us, let's
Okay.
take a larger search and see if there's any totally different way of looking at this issue that's maybe a little more progressive.
I'm just throwing it out there. In a perfect world, we acknowledge the good behavior.
That's a budget item.
Yeah, that is
That's
a budget item.
Budget item. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to item E. Discussion and possible approval of the first reading of policy IJNDB, use of technology, resources in instruction. Dr. Chestnut, this is what you were talking about, correct?
Correct.
So the rest of these policy changes are recommended by ASBA. So are there any questions or comments on IJNDB?
Unless there's no further discussion.
Well, I have a
motion to-
question. Wait, hold that thought. The paragraph that they're adding, Dr. Chestnut, where it says put parent notification, do we currently already do that?
I believe this is in line with what we're currently doing, yes.
Okay. Okay, so I just want to make sure we were in line with, because
Did you get that?
we did, but I just want people to know that we already do a parent
Right.
'Cause I signed
notification.
it.
I said it 3 times.
Okay, go
Okay.
for it.
I will state again. Motion to approve as stated.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, item F, discussion and possible approval of the first reading of policy JFAA, admission of resident students. Is there any discussion or questions regarding this?
I think it's a great change.
Okay, any motions?
May I just ask a quick question on that?
Certainly.
So would a student whose parent is transferred, that's in the military, would they need to show proof of that military, like military ID? Or I'm just kind of curious of, do they need to show proof of them active military duty? I guess that's what it'd be called.
The old DD 214 form.
Yes. So is that something that we would get a copy of in order for that to be included?
That's probably the
I
document.
mean, I would assume, but I didn't know if that would need to be highlighted of what would
I
be
don't think that
acceptable to
that would be
prove.
covered under this. That would probably be covered under the admission documents.
Admissions,
Where
I
they
was
would
wondering.
be, but not necessarily the policy, but necessarily, what they would need in order to enroll them back into school.
So would that need to be added to the admissions of?
No, not
for
in this
that
policy.
subset?
No, that would just be, it would be kind of like just,
This states the requirement, the admissions would go over what the parent needs to produce.
right.
Right.
Well, but but this doesn't say that the parent has to produce a birth certificate or immunization records.
Which they
That
still
stuff,
have to do
but
this.
that's stuff
Right.
that you have to do. So the military ID thing would probably fall under that. That's not something you'd want to put in policy, but something that would be paperwork required in order to enroll a student. This just states that we would readmit them.
Okay.
There is in item M, all the way down, it says where it lists the documentation, it says other documentation from state, tribal, or federal agency. Social Security,
So I guess
Veterans
that'd be the federal.
Administration, Arizona Department of, so it's covered.
Yeah. It just didn't say specific military, so that's what I was wondering.
So do I have any motions for this?
I'll motion to approve policy JFAA as written.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Discussion and possible approval of policy JFABC, admission of transfer students. Any discussion?
If there is no discussion, I move to approve.
I have a motion. Do I
I
have a
apologize.
second?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And this is discussion and possible approval of the first reading of policy JFB, open enrollment. Is there any discussion on this one?
So did we put in this April 15th date?
Mm-hmm. And May 15th for the notifications.
January 30th.
Dr. Chestnut?
And then by
Yeah.
January 30 of every
Yes.
year?
We wrote that in there.
We wrote
yeah.
that in,
Uh-huh.
okay.
They left it blank for us to put our dates
Our
in,
own school,
Right.
right.
but what they did is they removed one of the paragraphs.
Yes, down at the bottom.
But the dates that are in that are what's in our current policy.
And are those going to change after we go to extended school year?
Yeah, we might have to revise these next year, yeah.
Okay,
Be good for this year, though.
okay.
So make a mental note, we'll need to bring this back before the end of the school year, please. Any other discussions or questions? Do I have a motion?
I'll motion to approve policy JFB, open enrollment, as is.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion
Sorry.
and a second.
I was
All in
lost.
favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, aye. Discussion and possible approval of the first reading of policy JL, student wellness. Any questions, discussions, or motions?
So they added in the sunscreen
The
thing.
sun-
Yes, they
Mhm.
did.
Good.
It is good.
Okay, motion to approve as written.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Judd gets it.
Yep.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And discussion and possible approval of the first reading of policy KB, parent involvement in education. Any discussions, questions, or motions on this?
I have a question.
Yes.
I like the parent satisfaction survey.
I'll
I
second
do.
that.
So I don't want to get rid of it. We don't have to, do we?
Well, that was going to be my question, is why is that being striked out? Because I thought from a quality improvement process that the satisfaction surveys is key.
It had to be wiped out because it's no longer an ARS statute. Because if you look at that line at the very end, it says that it's part of the ARS statute, and that's why it was stricken.
Well, I would just rather strike pursuant to ARS 15.
We can certainly do that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I
And
was just
leave
going
it.
to say. Just because
Yeah.
they strike it doesn't mean that
Right.
we have to.
We
just
We're
can't
leaving
have
it
it.
in our
Can't have that
policy.
language
Yeah.
in there.
Because we need that feedback.
Yeah, I love it.
Well, I think this is just the right to participate. It's not saying we can or can't do it.
I know, but I think if we have it in policy, then it's make sure it happens. It's like showing good faith to our parents that you have the right. Like they could go to their school and say, why do I, if someone wasn't doing one?
Well, it's just part of our, the total quality improvement
Right.
plan, that's
Feedback.
key.
The
Encouraging
right of
it.
parents, is that what it is? The superintendent and parents, parent involvement.
Just in case it adds any weight to the decision, we do this at our school. Most schools do
Yes.
this. It's you're getting people in. You have a collective audience. At that point, you get the information, and it's
Right.
a common thing.
We do these all the time, yeah. we
Right.
just-
So we can certainly leave that in, but just take out, like Mrs. Anderson had suggested, pursuant to ARS 15.353.
Just strike that.
Just
Yeah.
strike that.
Right.
And leave the rest of 17 in.
I will motion to amend or to adopt this with just removing the pursuant to ARS 15.353.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. So, let's see. Our next two items, we'll have to, we can motion and vote on these right now. We'll do them separately, and then we'll leave for executive session. The first one is item K, approved to adjourn to executive session pursuant to ARS 38431A4 for discussion and consultation with our attorney and regarding the superintendent's contracts. So do I have a motion for that?
I'll motion that we convene to executive session pursuant to ARS 38-431-03A4 for discussion or consultation with our attorney in order to consider our position and instruct attorney regarding the superintendent's future contract.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Oh.
Okay, Mrs. Knorr. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed. Now, item L is then also to approve to adjourn to executive session pursuant to ARS 38431A1 for discussion regarding the renewal of the superintendent's employment agreement, and this one, he would be invited to come in. So, again, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve to go in executive session to discuss the
You just say-
ARS
Yeah,
38431A3A1.
Okay.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are in executive session. It is 8:12. Before you guys go, we need